There is a kind of cold that goes deeper than snow and wind, a stillness that can freeze not only lakes and rivers, but the warmth inside a heart. I remember the night I met the one who carried that cold with her, the one the northern folk whispered about as the Snow Queen. It was a winter of fierce storms. The north wind seemed restless, hurling snow across the mountains in great whirling veils. From the sky, as I guided my sleigh through the clouds, I watched the world below disappear and reappear under shifting curtains of white. Villages were wrapped in drifts so high that doors barely opened. Forests bent under the weight of ice, and out beyond them all, in the silent reaches where mountains stand like ancient guardians, I felt a chill unlike any other. I know the cold well. It is my longtime companion. The crisp air that reddens cheeks, the sharp sting that wakes the senses when you step outside. But this cold was different. It did not dance and play. It did not invite rosy noses and woolen scarves and laughter. It pressed down like a heavy hand, quieting voices, dimming lights, making people turn inward with worry. That was when I heard the wish. Wishes reach me in many forms. Some ride on the breath of a whispered prayer. Others fall from eyes as tears. Some are sent out silently, with no words, just a deep ache turned toward the sky. On that night, I heard a wish that trembled between all three. Please, it said, the way a far-off bell might sound through a storm, bring back the warmth. I followed the wish through the snow-choked clouds, over dark mountains and frozen rivers, until I came upon a village locked in an unnatural frost. Chimneys were cold. Windows were black. Even at Christmas time, when there should have been candles in every pane, joy in every room, the houses sat silent, their shutters rimmed with ice. We settled the sleigh in the center of the village square. My reindeer stomped uneasily, their breath hanging in the air like still smoke, refusing to drift. The snow here did not sparkle. It lay flat and dull, as though the light had given up trying. I walked past houses where reeds hung frozen, their evergreen branches brittle as glass. No laughter, no singing, no clatter of dishes, no rustle of paper wrapping gifts. Only the crunch of my boots and the steady whisper of falling snow. At the edge of the village, a single cottage glowed with a faint, dogged light. In its small window, a candle burned, though its flames shivered under the weight of the cold pressing against the glass. I stepped closer and peered inside. There was a little boy, no more than 10, sitting beside the window with his hands cupped around the candle, as if his palms alone kept it alive. His name, I would learn, was Emile. His breath thawed the air in front of him, even indoors. He wore 2 coats and a scarf, yet he still shivered. Behind him, his grandmother lay piled blankets, frail and still. A kettle hung over the hearth, but no fire burned beneath it. Wood was scarce, and even when they lit it, the cold seemed to swallow the heat in moments. Emile turned his eyes to the window, and with a voice hoarse from the chill, whispered, "Please, I don't know who can hear me, but if anyone can, bring back the warmth, for her, for everyone." The wish rang through the air like a small, brave bell. "That is why I am here," I said softly, slipping through the door as the latch gave way under an unseen hand. Inside, the candle flickered higher, as if greeting an old friend. Emile gasped when he saw me, but it was not fear that filled his eyes. It was a tired, aching wonder. Are you?" he began. "Yes," I answered gently. "And I have come because you lit a candle in a village that has forgotten light." He looked around at the cold walls, at the frost creeping along the floorboards. "It's not just us," he said. "The whole village has grown quiet. People stopped visiting. They say the winter is cursed. They stay behind their doors, and each day feels colder than the one before." "Something is holding this place," I agreed, feeling the dense chill that clung to every corner. "Tell me, Emile, did anything change before the deep frost came?" He frowned, thinking. The storms grew stronger, he said slowly. The sky turned hard and gray. But it was the day the river froze all at once that frightened everyone. One moment it flowed, the next it was locked in ice clear to the bottom. The old people whispered her name. Whose? I asked, though I already knew. The Snow Queen, he whispered, barely daring to say it aloud. They say she rules over cold places where hearts grow numb. They say that when people stop believing in kindness and start closing their doors, she comes, and the winter belongs to her. The candle between us wavered, its flame stretching thin. It is not entirely their fault, I said gently. Fear can make people turn inward, hiding their warmth as if it were a thing that can run out. But warmth grows only when it is shared. When they stopped sharing, when doors closed and visits ceased, the Snow Queen found room to enter. Emil's eyes filled with tears. Can you stop her? I can try, I answered, but I cannot do it alone. The north wind howled suddenly, rattling the shutters. Through the crack at the bottom of the door, a thread of pale mist slid in, bringing with it a sharper chill that pricked at the skin. Somewhere beyond the village, I felt it, a presence watching, distant and proud, like a figure carved from ice in a palace of frozen glass. Stay near your grandmother, I told Emil. Keep this candle burning, and no matter what you see or hear, do not let your heart harden. Do you understand? He nodded, clutching the candle as if it were the last ember of the world. I stepped back out into the square. Snow fell in fine, needle-like crystals that stung the eyes. I could feel her gaze on me now, and I followed it beyond the last houses, up the hill where a line of old stone markers stood buried in drifts. There, at the crest of the hill, the air seemed to sharpen, turning brittle, almost glassy. Frost feathered across the rocks in delicate patterns, too precise to be natural, like lace laid by an unseen hand. And standing amidst those silent stones was a figure cloaked in white, her hair a cascade of silver, her eyes the pale blue of winter sun on ice. I wondered when you would come, she said, her voice clear and cold. You wear warmth like a cloak, old man of the north. It does not belong here. Winter belongs here, I answered, stepping forward, my breath gusting in clouds. But the kind of winter that cherishes firesides and songs and shared bread, not this quiet of locked doors and lonely hearts. She tilted her head slightly. I bring purity, she said. Silence, stillness, no quarrels, no noise, no messy emotions, only the calm of a world asleep. A world asleep cannot love, I replied, and love is what brought Christmas into being. Love, she said, and the word almost cracked in the air. Love brings pain, grief, loss, betrayal. The cold I bring spares them those things. Your cold spares them everything, I said, joy and sorrow alike. You freeze them in place and call it peace. But hearts were made to beak, not to be encased in ice. For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not anger. She was too removed from warmth for that. But a shadow, like a memory half remembered. You speak as if I chose this, she said softly, as if I was not made of snow and silence from the start. No one is made of only one thing, I said. Even you. She turned away, looking down at the village. Smoke that should have been rising from 100 chimneys was absent. They close their doors on each other, she said. They choose their own isolation. I simply finish what they begin. And yet, I said, one house keeps a candle in the window. One boy whispered into the storm, not for himself, but for his grandmother. He asked not for gifts, not for escape, but for warmth to return, for everyone. Tell me, Snow Queen, is that not reason enough to loosen your hold? Her eyes grew distant. One candle, she murmured, one boy, against a village that turned away from its own warmth. Do you remember, I asked quietly, what it is like to feel a single kind gesture in the midst of cold? One hand extended when you expect rejection. One voice that says, stay. when you have only ever been told to go. Something trembled in the air between us. For a moment, the snowflakes paused mid-fall, suspended like tiny stars. "I do not remember," she said, but in her voice, I heard the slightest crack, not in strength, but in certainty. "Then come and see," I said. I held out my hand. The wind keened, wrapping around us like a circling flock of ghosts. For a long moment, she did not move. She had stood at the edges of the world for centuries, watching, freezing, withdrawing. To step closer now, to take the hand of one who carried warmth, that was a risk she had never taken. At last, slowly, as if her limbs were unused to such a gesture, she placed her ice-cold hand in mine. Together we walked back down the hill, into the village. As we passed each house, frost on the windows quivered. From behind shutters, I sensed hearts stirring in uneasy dreams, memories of times when neighbors gathered, when laughter bounced off the walls like thrown snowballs. We stopped before Emil's cottage. Through the window, the candle's tiny flame fought bravely against the press of frost. "Watch," I said. Inside, Emil's grandmother opened her eyes slightly, gazing at the wavering light. Her lips moved, and though I could not hear the words, I recognized the rhythm of gratitude. Emil, seeing her awake, leaned closer, whispering to her, his voice full of love. He had no firewood to spare, no feast to offer, no bright decorations to hang. All he had was that small flame and the warmth of his devotion, but that was enough. The Snow Queen's hand tightened very slightly in mine. I felt the chill in her lessen by a breath. "Why does he not curse the cold?" she asked slowly. "Why does he not rage against the winter that took his comfort?" "Because love looks for how to give, even when there is little left," I said. "He cannot warm the whole village, but he can keep this candle burning. He can stay at his grandmother's side. He can keep his heart from freezing." The Snow Queen watched as Emil wrapped his own scarf around his grandmother's shoulders. I saw something change in her face, a softening, like frost on a window pane beginning to melt around the edges. "That feeling," she whispered, almost to herself. "I have stood outside so long, I forgot it had a name." "It is the warmth you have always stood guard against," I said, "not because you are evil, but because you were afraid of what it might undo in you." The wind around us dropped to a hush. Slowly, the thick, oppressive cold that had held the village began to thin. The breath I took no longer cut like sharpened glass. It merely stung, as winter should. Ice on eaves groaned as it loosened, drops of water forming and falling like small crystal beads to the ground. "What have I been doing?" she asked, and for the first time, her voice wavered, not like cracking ice, but like someone finding their own reflection unfamiliar. I thought I brought calm, but it is emptiness I laid over them. "You can change it," I said. "You need not vanish. Winter will always be needed. The snow for the fields, the rest for the earth, the silence for reflection. But let your touch be the cold that sharpens, not the cold that deadens. Let rivers freeze so children may skate, not so hearts forget how to care." She looked at me, and in the clear blue of her eyes, a single glimmer appeared, like a star caught in a drop of thawing ice. "I do not know how to be anything else," she whispered. "Start here," I replied, nodding toward the village. "Release your grip. Let lights come back into windows. Let people feel the cold enough to seek each other, not hide from each other." She took a breath that seemed to draw the very frost from the stones. Then, with a graceful motion of her hand, she opened it, palm upward, as if letting something invisible go. All around us, the air shuddered. The heavy, smothering chill broke apart, rising like mist and dissolving into the night. Chimney bricks cracked and popped as the ice holding them surrendered. In the houses, people stirred, suddenly aware of how silent they had been, how long they had shut themselves away. One by one, lights flickered on, first a candle here, then a lamp there, then another and another. until the village square glowed like a cluster of small stars on the snow. Children peered out through windows, their eyes wide. Neighbors opened doors, blinking at each other as if seeing one another for the first time in years. Someone laughed, a sound rusty with disuse but full of promise. Another called out a greeting. Soon, people were stepping into the square, wrapping shawls and coats around themselves, drawn by the sudden, gentle air. I glanced at the Snow Queen. The harsh gleam in her features had softened. Her cloak still shimmered with frost, but it no longer sliced the air around her. She seemed less like a statue carved of ice and more like a winter morning. Cold, yes, but bright and clear with the hint of warmth coming somewhere behind it. "What will become of me now?" she asked quietly. "You will still walk the high ridges," I answered. "You will still shape snowflakes and lay white blankets on the hills. But when you feel villages growing too quiet, too closed, remember this place. Remember the boy who kept a candle burning. Nudge their windows with a playful wind, not a crushing one. Let your snow invite them together instead of driving them apart." She considered this, then bowed her head once in slow acceptance. "In that house," she said, glancing at Emil's cottage. "Will they be all right? I will see to them," I promised. "But you have already done more than you know." She turned away, and as she walked up the hill, her form grew lighter, thinner, until she was only a shimmer at the edge of sight. The frost patterns on the stones faded, leaving only a dusting of ordinary snow. I returned to Emil's home. When I stepped inside, the air was still cold, but no longer biting. His grandmother's cheeks held a faint hint of color. The candle burned steadily, the flame now a small but confident tongue of gold. "Did it work?" Emil asked, eyes wide. I smiled. "Step outside and see." He opened the door and stared in astonishment as he saw neighbors in the square, speaking in low, uncertain voices at first, then louder and warmer. A woman from across the lane hurried over with a bundle of wood wrapped in cloth. "I had some to spare," she said softly. "Forgive me for not sharing sooner." Another brought a pot of soup. A man who rarely left his own threshold offered to help patch the cracks in their walls. The village, once silent, began to hum with life again. Emil looked up at me. "Was it magic?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "but not only mine. A queen reclaimed her heart, a village remembered its neighbors, and one boy kept a candle lit when everything felt hopeless. That is the strongest magic of all." Outside, the snow still fell, but now it sparkled in the light of a dozen windows. Children were already gathering their mittens and boots, dreaming of snowmen and games. The winter was still deep, but it was no longer empty. So if you ever stand by a window on a cold night and feel the world growing a little too quiet, light a candle, offer a smile, knock on a neighbor's door. Remember that winter is not meant to bury warmth, but to make it shine brighter. And if you see a snowflake linger on the glass just a moment longer than it should, as if someone were watching, perhaps the Snow Queen is there too, learning, as we all are, how to hold both cold and kindness in the same season. Merry Christmas, my friend. May your heart stay warm, even when the world outside is covered in snow.